I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and I'm not sure how many people have heard about this story. And so I definitely wanted to talk about this here on my channel. On Tuesday, May 23rd, the Surgeon General issued a warning about kids and social media. I wanted to take some time today to walk through what he actually said. I will have a link to this report down in the description, and it talks about social media and youth mental health. Here are the different sections of it. Today, I definitely want to cover the social media and youth mental health section, how it has positive and negative impacts for children and adolescents, what drives a lot of the concerns that people may have, and then talking about a way forward, what policymakers can do, technology companies can do, parents and caregivers can do, children and adolescents, and then also researchers. I will cover the parents and caregivers, and then also what kids and teens can do as well. They start out this report by acknowledging that about 95% of youth age 13 to 17 use at least one form of social media. And I wonder if it would be more than that if the 5% that don't, if they just don't have access to a phone. Or I know some kids that have used other friends' devices, or there are so many different ways that kids can engage on social media. And nearly 40% of children age 8 to 12 use social media. And despite this widespread use, we're really not sure exactly how this impacts kids and youth, because social media, like, it's been around for a while, but it's kind of newer. So research often takes time to be able to take a look at the full impact, and they're calling for more research on this impact. So let's move forward to the positive and negative impacts. The influence of social media on youth is shaped by many factors, and one of them is the time spent, the types of platforms, and then the degree that it disrupts essential things like sleep and physical activity. And so that's where I wonder if later, if they're going to talk about being careful, having phones in rooms, especially like right by the phone, and is it starting to impact your child's sleep? I know a lot of clients I work with, they might use Pandora, or they might use Spotify, or they use different apps on their phone to help with sleep. There is also CBTI, so cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. That is an app that can actually help with sleep. It was developed for veterans. I heard about it on a recent book that I was reading, and being able to have tools. So there are lots of tools on the phone, but then there are also a lot of distractions on devices as well. They go on to talk about how brain development is a critical factor to consider when assessing the risk and potential for any harm. 10 to 19, they're undergoing specific brain development. This period of time, it is normal for there to be risk taking behaviors. And often I have a lot of families coming to me, and anytime a parent says, my kid did something on their phone, I know it was something was sent that was inappropriate, the child received something that was inappropriate, or they're talking with somebody that the parent doesn't approve of. Like, it's just, I know, because often the parent is like, not my child. And so that's why I have another full video that I will link down below and in the top comment as well, about how we can protect our kids online. I met with cybersecurity expert Cyber Farida, and we broke down different ways that people can help, parents specifically can help protect their kids online. And I really liked at the end of that video, she talked about the parents doing their own work, because often this can trigger. So when I find something on my child's phone, it brings up my own fears, my own just kind of things. And it's important to not overreact to a situation, because then the child is going to shut down and they are not going to hear the very important message that the parent has. So it looks like, based on some research, adolescent social media use can sometimes lower life satisfaction for girls age 11 to 13 and boys 14 to 15 years old, because of that vulnerable brain development, and that exposure can bring on additional scrutiny for that age range. That's interesting. So let's take a look at the benefits that they mentioned. The connecting with others that have shared identities, abilities, and interests. It can be a way of self expression. It can be a way to de-stress, especially for LGBTQ youth, helping them find safe communities, and then also for other marginalized groups. So let's see which potential harms that they listed. So they looked at a longitudinal study. So longitudinal studies is where they study the same person over a period of time, age 12 to 15, who spent more than 3 hours per day on social media, and they experienced things like depression and anxiety. As of 2021, eighth and 10th graders now spend an average of 3.5 hours per day on social media. That's a lot, but sometimes they're using, because I wonder if they're including things like Snapchat where people are communicating, or Discord, or because I think there are some active social media platforms where you are actually communicating with people versus texting, versus TikTok or other places where you're more passive, where you're scrolling. And y'all know I create content on TikTok. That's in no way to downplay one of those. But I think 3.5 hours of scrolling versus like an hour of messaging with friends and this and that, I do notice that often people can have a lot of anxiety around, like, I have to get back to my friend, especially when they come into session sometimes, because we have to set boundaries around people, not, if it's not an emergency, being able to let their friend know, hey, I'm in session, or I'm in a meeting, or I'm meeting with my doctor, and not going back and forth. And I know sometimes with Snapchat, trying to keep those streaks alive can bring up some anxiety. And often the phone is one of the first things, because it's often the most important thing to the child or teen. And so if there are issues with grades or with other things, that kind of being an issue. And so they're looking at the emotional, the how it impacts how they see themselves, and then also picking up any disordered eating issues. And so taking a look at any of those things, also issues with sleep, online harassment, and then more emotional concerns. Okay. All right. Potential risk from content exposure. Extreme, inappropriate, and harmful content continues to be easily and widely accessible to children and adolescents. I think the platforms are going to try to reduce that, but the thing that makes it difficult is if kids know that they see a different algorithm based on their age, sometimes they might not tell the truth about their age. Because I know, like on TikTok, under 12, you're not supposed to be able to post on the platform. But I know lots of 12-year-olds that are people younger that are posting from their own accounts because they're not using their real ages. I wonder if some of the platforms are going to do a better job with age verification, but that would be hard to do because normally you don't get an ID until maybe 15, maybe 16. And so I wonder how they're going to work on doing that. And the platform, if somebody has a fake ID or if they use somebody else's ID to set it up, I could see there still being issues with it long term. Anytime there's a problem like this, kids are always going to find a way around it. I do also think that some of the media coverage, because I know when I hear about some of these horrible challenges and things, they're things that I never saw. Like I never heard of some of these challenges, or it never showed up on my feed to try to do those things. But because I wonder if sometimes kids find out about some of those challenges from the news covering it too. I know a lot of this exploded during the pandemic when a lot of people had just more free time, had more time on phones, and people were trying to connect and using social media as a way to do so. And then potential risk for excessive and problematic use. And during my other video, we talked about how they use psychology experts that know how to keep people on the platform. And there's some of that gamification where like you get points and you can earn things, and you can have cool stickers, or I don't know, like sometimes there are things that they do to keep you on the platform. Hmm. Nearly three and four teenagers believe technology companies manipulate users to spend more time on their devices. I could definitely see that. And it looks like they also took a look at ADHD, and there needs to be more research on this, but A study of adolescents without ADHD at the beginning of the study found after a 2-year follow-up, high frequency of digital media was associated risk of developing OD. That's where I don't know if they had the symptoms before. That's odd. So in this study, it looks like some people didn't have ADHD at the beginning of the study, and after 2-year follow-up, they might have received an ADHD diagnosis. So correlation doesn't mean causation. So just because two things are correlated, it doesn't mean that the one caused the other. And I think that's why they're saying there needs to be more to do. In this section, they go through the evidence gaps, and I think that just goes into the types of things that would be helpful to research for the future. We must take action, a way forward. Okay. So our children and adolescents don't have the luxury of waiting years until we know the full extent of social media's impact. Their childhoods and development are happening now. While social media use can have positive impacts for some children, the evidence noted throughout this advisory necessitates significant concern with the way it is currently designed, developed, and utilized. And I wonder if this is getting into some of the algorithms and how the algorithm kind of gives what you're reacting to and responding to. And the goal of the algorithm is to keep you on the platform. Child and adolescent use of platforms designed for adults places them at high risk of unsupervised, developmentally inappropriate, and potentially harmful use, according to the National Scientific Council on Adolescence. I could see where people could come away with that. And I think they're trying to have parents take an active role, have children and teens take an active role, and then also the platforms acknowledge their roles as well. And it looks like they're looking toward new legislation too. So there have been hearings with TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. All of these different platforms have talked about ways that they're attempting to limit some of these things. And there's a lot of lobbying that goes into why certain bills, why certain things haven't happened. There are definitely concerns, there are definitely issues. Let's see if we can get to some of the recommendations. So this is what policymakers can do, what technology companies can do, what parents and caregivers can do. Create a family media plan. Agreed upon expectations can help establish healthy technology boundaries at home, including social media use. A family media plan can promote family discussion and rules about media use and include topics such as balancing screen online time, content boundaries. Boundaries are so important. I have a whole video just on boundaries, and not disclosing personal information online. And I think that sometimes the allure of online, kids might think that's safer, and kids might disclose some things online that they would never tell a stranger on the street, when actually being online there's less protection. There's a greater exposure and risk online. And so and they have an example here that people can link to. Create tech-free zones and encourage children to foster in-person relationships. And that's where, within my conversation with Cyber Farida, we talked about parents modeling that as well. So I am horrible, and I'm going to have to get better at this before my kid gets a device, because I am on my device right before bed. I am on my device first thing in the morning. I am on my device a lot. So I think the adults making sure that they see what they're modeling for the children is important. And that's the very next thing. Model sensible social media behavior. And as a content creator, that's where I try to balance. So I used to spend so much more time just scrolling TikTok and just scrolling. TikTok was like my big one. And I stepped away from just doom scrolling on Facebook, or doing some of those things just to engage more in real relationships, real life. It can be a distraction, and distractions in moderation can be healthy. Too much of a distraction can create a problem. Teach kids about technology and empower them to be responsible online participants at the appropriate age. report cyberbullying and online issues, work with other parents to establish shared norms and practices. Okay. What children and teens can do. Reach out for help. If you or someone you know has been negatively affected by social media, they have some information to reach out there. Create boundaries to help balance online and offline activities. Develop protective strategies and healthy practices. So I am so proud. So I have some clients that I work with where they say, I don't need to be on this social media, or I have to be careful with this. They're self-aware to know that they have to be mindful with certain things. Or I think adults, kids, teens, if Instagram is making me feel bad about myself, then maybe that's not the platform for me, or maybe I need to adjust things. So not viewing social media from this passive perspective, but having a very active approach. I think that could be helpful. Be cautious about what you share, protect yourself and others. Don't keep harassment or more serious things a secret. Make sure to reach out. And they give stopbullying.gov as a resource. And don't take part in online harassment, because I've seen that happen too, where I've had to talk with clients about blocking people or about how do they create safety for themselves online. And then they have some specific things that researchers can do. Acknowledgements. All right. That was the rest of that article. I hope that this was helpful. If you have questions or want me to dive deeper into any of those topics, please let me know. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.